Hello, my name is Mr. Anderson, and I'm mean to people on the internet. I'm always very polite about it, though. I just tend to ask difficult questions and insist on the answers. In one of my recent debates against two flood geologists, which are people who think that Noah's flood is real and that it explains everything that you see in the geologic column, I had to be quite firm with some of my opponents. And if you've seen my recent video about debate techniques where people are just stubbornly refusing to acknowledge reality, you might remember this clip.
You're
All right,
putting
so sir,
points
Joe,
into
I don't
one
know. I
question
mean,
as
John's
well.
asked or John's answered a question. Let me talk to him for a second. I'll get back to you. So, John, what you're telling me then, and I just want to make this crystal clear because we can go through piles and piles and piles of documentation that shows that there are different animals at different layers. You know this full well. Both of you know that there is a pattern of simple to complex from the Cambrian to the Cretaceous to the Mesozoic eras to today, that there are different animals found at different depths. Don't tell me that you don't know that. Are you telling me honestly that there's no ordering to the fossil record? Really?
What you find.
I'm glad that McKay jumped in there because he really pushed it to the absurd, right? I mean, and I understand why you'd be frustrated because it's like, really, we can't even agree that there's any order at all.
Say, like, although I'm being very firm with these guys, like, one of the things that I find is really important when you're doing this kind of thing is that, you can act mad when it's appropriate, but don't actually get mad because
Yeah. No, yeah,
then you're going to lose your objectivity. You're going to lose your focus, right? So, like, it's almost like in a sense, you're kind of playing a role, right? And, like, I mean, these guys can say whatever they want to me. They can insult me. They do insult me later.
Evidence you've shown today is that you've never dug a hole, found an order of fossils, or been to a conference on where strata boundaries are, and so you're ignorant rather than knowledgeable. You're well presented, but ignorant.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Yeah. Right. It's not going to hurt my feelings because it's not like they're actually, like, because my feelings are not accessible to them, right? They don't get to talk to that part of me, right? They're talking to, Mr. Anderson, right? Mr. Anderson doesn't have feelings and will not stop, and he's like Terminator.
Yeah.
That Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop. Ever.
And he will get you, you know.
Yeah. No, I got that.
So, sir, here's a diagram from a paper of somebody who has actually dug a hole, who is actually educated, who does actually know what they're talking about. And here are a whole bunch of different fossils. And there's an order. You can see here what says ranges of stratigraphically important foraminifera. You see that?
Talking to you. That's fine. I see the diagrams. I had them all through my geology course.
Okay, lovely. So you'll agree with me that I presume you take no issue with the notion that the person who wrote this article, which is published in a journal, Geological Quarterly, that's a respected scientific journal, isn't it?
It's okay. Yeah, that's fine. But you missed the point. You see,
no, sir, I'm going to be the one making.
Okay, no, I'm jumping in. Okay, Mr. Anderson, you had 32 minutes. You're interrupting John after he's been sitting patiently waiting. We're going to give John the last word.
Yeah, this should have been the coup de grace, right? This was the moment.
Yeah. So even here, you can see he's trying to insult me. He's trying to throw me off. Did I let that stop me? No, I stay focused, and I was gonna get him. The only thing that did stop me was the moderator cutting the whole thing off and ending the debate, which is exactly what you're about to see.
Okay, again, I have to make one very important point. The guy who did that, bless his heart for digging holes, bless his heart for mapping forams, but he believes already in the geologic column, which is based on the concept that the rocks change content all up and down. That's probably the best place to finish this. So
he's saying that they lied. Yes, that's what he's saying. He's saying they must have lied about the
John Mackay for that final word there. Mr. Anderson, I appreciate the back and forth engagement for 32 minutes. That was good, fast paced, and very engaging. So with that, we are going to now move
Sorry, what
That's
were you
how I
saying?
feel every time. That's how I feel too.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of like, I was responding, and then I was like, I'm muted. All right, fine. You know what? Like, all right, you want to mute me? Like, first of all, you're gonna let the guy just completely pontificate.
Which could be a separate video on its own. Just clipping together all the times in this debate where Donnie would interrupt me when I tried to cut the guest off from just rambling to try and waste the time, of which I only have a limited amount. But I wonder whether or not that's something that you guys want to see. Why don't you leave a comment in the event that that's something you have an interest in seeing a video on?
Instead of answering my questions. And then that was going to be the coup de grace. And then I didn't get to deliver it. And it was like, well, whatever,
I mean,
I think I've made my point anyways, because it's very clear that that there is evidence that there's a call that there is a geologic column, and everybody knows there is. And then now I'm kind of, really sort of like, here's a hole, and then here is a series of forams in that hole, and they're changing like very slightly, like to the point where, like, you need to be an expert to tell these little suckers apart because they've got these tiny little differences. And yet they maintain this order. And they, Buddy very much doesn't want to talk about that. And it's like, you know what? Good enough.
well, you could see where he was going to go with that, with the one thing he said about the paper, which is they come with a assumption of a geological column. He's essentially saying that he doesn't trust that data in terms of they're in that order, like those observations. That's the way it really comes off to me. He doesn't even want to accept the figure itself. I don't trust that geological column to be an actual order of time or
Right, but it
layers
doesn't
laid
matter
down.
whether it's an
And so
order of time,
therefore
it's an
the
order,
forams
right?
that you found in those layers aren't necessarily they're in the order you see them in, but everything's mixed up anyway, which is stupid because there's obviously a pattern there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I mean, there's a pattern there. It doesn't matter whether he's right, whether he's right or not. The pattern is not explained by what he's saying, but he's just throwing it all the way back to, you can't trust these people. These are geologists and they have assumptions. And because of their assumptions, you can't trust their interpretation of the data. The thing is, that's not interpretation. That is the data. You're showing the data.
Yeah. Well, and so, like, it's unfortunate, right, that that he allowed them to waste so much time, and that I got cut off, because the response to that particular to that particular counter was, was going to be, so there's this whole field called biostratigraphy, and they use it pretty regularly in the oil industry to find oil. And like, this works, and it works so well that they can drill down, and then they can start going horizontally and start taking the forams, for example, or other different microfossils from the tip of that drill bit, and they can tell you whether or not the layer goes up or down like this, so the drill bit needs to follow that layer based on which tiny microfossils are at the tip of that drill bit. And we're talking about like really little changes where, like, there's an extra bump, on
right. No, these are differences between species of small things. Which are very minor differences morphologically.
And we're talking about, like, there's an overlap, right, where, like, we want to be in that part of the rock where this species has started to appear, but this species hasn't completely disappeared yet, and they're both there at the same time. And if one of them disappears, you're too high. If the other one disappears, you're too low. Like, that's how precise we can be in terms of where this drill is going to go. So it's not just people.
Yeah, if you could have gotten to that,
that's where we were going.
That would have been interesting to the audience. I think that's something that when you get down to those kind of specifics, it's kind of like,
that's where we were
your
going.
Generalizations don't really they don't explain those specific things.
No.
So that's where we were going. It's a shame we weren't able to get there, but at least you guys get to see it and you know just how much trouble they were in.
And we're not there like, oh, there are gaps in the fossil record. Well, not this fossil record.
So you can see ultimately the point is stay cool, right? Stay focused.
Don't let little insults and little barbs and jabs and stuff like that throw you off. Don't even worry about them. Don't think about them, because what's going to matter is the argument. If you win the argument, their little barbs, they're nothing.